I've just given you a part of the picture as to what these three deputies of yours, high-ranking deputies, have said that you did on talking about removal, talking about replacements. Now, do you think it is a fair, honest characterization to say that you had only a, quote, limited involvement in the process, close quote?
Senator, I don't want to quarrel with you.
I don't want you to either. I just want you to answer the question.
Sir, I guess it's... I had knowledge that there was a process going on. I don't know all
You didn't understand there was a process going on?
No, I had, sir, I had knowledge that there was a process going on.
Well, were you involved in it?
Senator, with respect to Carol Lamb, for example.
Were you involved in the process?
I was involved in the process, yes, sir.
Were you involved to a limited extent only?
Yes, sir.
How much more could you have been involved than to be concerned about the replacement of Cummings and to evaluate Lamb and to be involved in Iglesias? Now, we haven't gone over the others, but is that limited in your professional judgment?
Based on what I thought that I understood was going on, yes, Senator. I thought Mr. Sampson, I directed Mr. Sampson to consult with senior officials in the department who had information about the performance of United States attorneys. I believe that that was ongoing, and that he would bring back to me a consensus recommendation. The discussion about Ms. Lamb, never in my mind, was about this review process, and I indicated so in my conversation with Pete Williams, I believe on March 26th, is that we were doing this process. Of course, there were other discussions outside of the review process about the performance of United States attorneys. I can't simply stop doing my supervisor responsibilities over United States attorneys because this review process is going.
Did you tell Mercer to take a look at Lamb's record with a view to having her removed as a U.S. attorney?
Senator,
or is he wrong?
I don't recall. Here's what, Senator, what I recall is, of course, the department had received numerous complaints about Carol Lamb's performance with respect to gun prosecutions and immigration prosecutions. I directed that we take a look at those numbers because I wanted to know. And I don't recall whether it was Mr. Mercer who presented me the numbers, but I recall being very concerned.
But you were involved in evaluating U.S. Attorney Lamb's record, weren't you?
Senator, I did not view that, and I did not view that as part of Mr. Sampson's project of trying to analyze and understand the performance of United States attorneys for possible removal.
Never mind Mr. Sampson's project. Weren't you involved in the evaluation of U.S. Attorney Lamb?
Senator, of course, I was involved in trying to understand.
Weren't you involved in the decision on the removal of Arkansas U.S. Attorney Bud Cummings, as Kyle Sampson testified?
Senator, I have no recollection about that, but I presume that is true.
Weren't you involved in the decisions with respect to U.S. Attorney Iglesias in New Mexico, as you've already testified in response to the chairman's questions?
Senator, I do recall having the conversation with Mr. Rove. I now understand that there was a conversation between myself and the president, and at some point, Mr. Sampson brought me what I understood to be the consensus recommendation of the senior leadership that we ought to make a change in that district.
Okay, now we've got to evaluate, and this is a final statement before I yield, as to whether the limited number of circumstances that I have recited, and it's only a limited number, there are many, many more, whether you are being candid in saying that you were involved only to a limited, you only had a, quote, limited involvement in the process, as to being candid, and also as to having sound judgment, if you consider that limited. And as we recite these, we have to evaluate whether you are really being forthright and saying that you, quote, should have been more precise, close quote, when the reality is that your characterization of your participation is just totally, significantly, if not totally, at variance with the facts.
Senator, you're talking about a series of events that occurred over approximately 700 days. I probably had thousands of conversations during that time. And so putting it in context, Senator, I would say that my involvement was limited. I think that is an accurate statement. It was limited involvement. And with respect to certain communications, such as the communication with the President, such as the discussions about Carol Lamb, I did not view that at the time as part of this review process. I simply considered those as doing part of my job. Complaints about the performance of Ms. Lamb, I directed the department to try to ascertain whether or not those complaints were legitimate, and if not, we ought to look at perhaps doing something about it.
Chairman says I can ask one more question. You're saying it's not part of the process? You thought it part of your job? Is that what you're saying?
Senator,
because if you are, I don't understand it.
Senator, I didn't consider it as part of this project that Mr. Sampson was working on. Simply because we had this process ongoing by Mr. Sampson doesn't mean that I quit doing my job as Attorney General and supervising the work of the United States attorneys, and that's what I attempted to do.
But it was intimately connected with her qualifications to stay on.
Senator, of course, in hindsight, I look back now that, of course, that may have affected the recommendations made to me, yes. But, Senator, when I focused on those complaints, I wasn't thinking about this process to remove U.S. attorneys. What I was focusing on a complaint that I'd received about her performance. That's what I was focused on. I wasn't focused on the review process itself. I wasn't focused on whether or not her name would go on this list. I was focused on making sure she was doing her job. That's what I was focused on.